that, folks. If you're back, let me know. It says I got 11 viewers here. Or do I have any? Yeah. Let me see viewers here. No. Anyway, so I lost people. I'm the only one here according to this now. Everyone's gone. All right, anybody there? No, just me. Just me. All right, well, I lost everybody. So sorry about that, folks. Very frustrating here with the internet dropping off. Feel very much back in Africa. All right, so with that, doesn't look like folks are transitioning over from the other side. Let me go back and look one more time just to make sure people got the word. Unable to chat. What the heck? Very frustrating. So am I up? Oh, Kung Fu Kenny's there. Okay, cool. All right, somebody came over. Shoot, sorry about that, guys. Okay, let me get that done. All right, sorry. So, Kenny, you're there? Wow. I lost internet. Sorry about that. Refresh chat. Okay, so someone's there. I don't have the link. Okay. I don't have the link, Kenny. If you have the link, if you could share it with them. Sorry about that. I'm still learning this process with the software, so kind of throws me off. Gosh. Participants. Yeah, it's just you and me right now. Anyway. All right, well, let me get back to where I was at there. So I was talking about the surface-to-air missiles. That's really strange if they're surface-to-air missiles. I don't know why the Chinese would put it there other than the Chinese found a market for the surface-to-air missiles, and it was something that the government of Zimbabwe asked for. Yeah, so thanks, Kenny. Yeah, I don't know why that happens. There's something with this laptop. It's a Windows-related thing. I prefer to do this off of. Hey, Doc Breaker, welcome back. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. So hopefully other folks come join us. Like I was mentioning, I seem to have trouble with this laptop. It's a relatively new one. I don't know why it does that. When I switch to a PC and use this suite on a PC, it'll probably work a lot better. Also, this laptop is not letting me bring in the NTI sources. I don't know why, so I'm just having problems with it. But anyway, I guess I should be surprised we got as far as we did there. So anyway, back to the surface-to-air missiles in Zimbabwe. That's news to me. That's a bit surprising to hear about that. I didn't know that, but if it were the case, I suspect the Chinese are just looking for a place to sell their missiles. I don't really think it has anything to do with the Beijing caring about the strategic needs of Zimbabwe. Anyway, it's just it's kind of odd. Yeah, maybe Konstantin Chiwengo, maybe he worked that deal out, something to reward the military, give them something to do, keep them busy. Oh, it's a YouTube related thing. It happens a lot on YouTube, even with streamers with the best equipment. Wow. Okay. All right. Hey, Jim, welcome back. All right, good. So we're back to 6 viewers. Yay. All right. Okay. We were talking about, welcome back, everybody. Thanks. I'm glad you stuck around and came back. Let me see who's there. So Dog Breaker, Jim, Kung Fu Kenny. It's great to see you guys. And I'm glad you came back. Okay. So, so the influence of Zimbabwe, of China in Zimbabwe, can't be diminished. It is a big factor there. But the question is that, a lot of folks, Mugabe included, thought that Zimbabwe is critically important to China. It isn't. It's just, these are just ties that go back to the liberation era. ZANU sought out support from China, whereas ZAPU looked to the Soviet Union and East Germany for its support. Now, that doesn't mean that ZANU didn't get it from there as well, but its ideological heart was with the Chinese, and ZAPU's ideological heart was with the Russians. And so those ties just go back decades, and that's kind of what's going on here. So it's just there. It's a legacy. A lot of people, in my view, lose their mind over China in Africa. Yeah, China is an important actor in Africa, has a big role there. Yes, they have more trade with Africa than the U.S. today, but that's not a consequence of it being important to China. It's a consequence of China being so large and doing so much trading and needing resources and seeking markets for its goods. The amount of effort and foreign direct investment that China puts into North America, Europe, Asia dwarfs what happens in Africa. So a lot of Africans like to run around and think that China really spends a lot of time worrying about Africa. Now, to be fair, the Chinese are clever. They are smart. They do send top officials and foreign ministers and trade ministers all over Africa, and they make great efforts. One of their efforts, though, which is often undermined by their own people's conduct, is that, listen, we're just like you, Chinese. We were colonized by the Europeans and Americans, and we are brown people too. So we empathize with you. And in the spirit of brotherhood, we can work together. Now, I'm embellishing a little bit, but this is an argument. This is a line that the government of China pushes across Africa, and it resonates with some Africans. But the problem is that when you see Black Africans being kicked out of their homes in Guangzhou, or being abused, or Chinese school books or Chinese newspapers running cartoons of Black Africans depicted as apes and subhuman, and I'm not talking about 1960, I'm talking about in 2019 and 2020. The problem is that there's a lot of Chinese who are somewhat bigoted and many who are racist. And I'm not defaming 1.6 billion Chinese. If I take a deep breath, what I'm saying is that the argument that they make, the story that they pass up about why they have a natural affinity with Africa because they've been colonized and because we're brown people too, is just too simplistic. And it works in some places in Africa with some people, but many Africans are more sophisticated than that, and it's not enough. So Africa is important to China, but not nearly as important as China is to Africans. That's the real thing. China matters to Africans quite a deal. As does the United States, and it's also overlooked, but it's not to the same degree that a lot of Africans realize. But anyway, so that's kind of about the Chinese thing. So any other questions out there? We're back up to 8 viewers, so that's good. We got a few people come across. So I'd like to answer some questions if anybody's got them. This was about Zimbabwe's 40th anniversary as an independent state. But I also have delved into South Africa because there have been some of the questions. But I'm happy to answer any other questions that people have. Otherwise, I was asked a question about by Jim about where I thought Zimbabwe was going in the next 10 years to the 50th anniversary. Yeah. Honestly, not that it's a good thing. The Wuhan coronavirus, or COVID-19 by its scientific name, is certainly not a good thing for anyone in the world for this to have happened. But from a geopolitical standpoint, it may in fact prove to be something that forces serious strategic change in a number of countries around the world, perhaps even the United States. We shall see. But it may be the impetus that forces some African governments to change their approach to governance. I don't know if it will. I hope that it will, those who are following a path that I don't agree with, like South Africa and Zimbabwe. But Zimbabwe, again, probably more than many countries in Africa, what happens in this crisis truly, truly matters. Honestly, if the United States and other donors, but also primarily the United States, pull back its support to provide food assistance in Zimbabwe right now, and we stopped our antiretroviral program right now, which we're not going to do. But if we were to stop that, there would be utter chaos in Zimbabwe almost overnight, as soon as people ran out of food. We have millions of Zimbabweans who are surviving on food assistance from abroad, much of that coming from the United States. And this is before COVID-19 ever took place. So if you were to remove that assistance on top of the fact that the country's already got serious problems and now COVID-19, all bets are off. Yep. So, I mentioned in a different video the other day, I talked about the amount of assistance the United States provides in Africa, and emergency assistance is taking place right now. So about $170 million has been provided to African governments, 37 different African governments, including Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe got $3 million in emergency medical assistance, emergency medical funds, and humanitarian assistance funds. And these, unlike the debt relief that the IMF is providing, now for the debt relief, Japan donated $100 million to a fund, the UK $185 million, which will relieve the debt for up to 19 African countries. It's very generous. Thank you. Appreciate you doing that. But that means that, let's say, Ghana borrowed $1 billion. Not $1 billion, that's too much. They borrowed $30 million. They have a $30 million loan, and it gets forgiven. Well, it's going to take a few weeks before that loan is forgiven and sorted out, and they wipe it off the books. All right. But what does that mean today? Do they get $30 million? No. That means at the beginning of the month, they don't have to make the next payment, which is say $800,000 and $200,000 that's interest. So they save $800,000 now, not 30 million. So the debt relief will be helpful long term for these countries, but it only helps marginally in the immediate term. Whereas the U.S. assistance, the $170 million that's gone out of $508 million globally, but 33%, $170 million to Africa, of that money, that is immediate transfers and grants, stuff that won't have to be paid back. It's given to our friends and partners and allies in Africa so that they can deal with the COVID-19 crisis, which is helpful. Is it enough? No, arguably not. No one's getting enough. No one's getting enough. We're not getting enough here in America, depending how you look at it. I'm a small government guy. I'm a fiscal conservative, so I get leery about government prospects. But this is the black swan event, and all bets are off. And how we approach this really has to be shaped by how events unfold in some respects. All right, so Warren Maverick says, in your opinion, what could help turn Zim around? Well, honestly, what could help is reform within ZANU-PF. ZANU-PF must find a way to create a soft parachute landing for the party stalwarts who were part of the liberation era and those who came in the 1980s who learned all the wrong habits about governance, and maybe even some in the 90s, and make way for a new generation, not the G40 group, but people who are younger to move into government. And then hopefully we can make a difference. But it's not going to be enough. Zimbabwe has to be a state that follows the rule of law. And we need to stop seeing this nonsense like we saw from the communications minister talking about foreign invaders. I appreciate that you're happy that you gained independence. You earned it as a people. But all people earned it, just like apartheid. Apartheid wasn't only a system that affected people of color in South Africa, it also affected white people who were opposed to the system. And it was repressive to all South Africans, including whites. You know, the Calvinistic authoritarian security state in South Africa did not just affect black, now affected them far worse and far more dramatically, but it was repressive to everyone. If you were a white South African and you wanted to gamble, you couldn't go to a casino. They weren't there. You had to go to Sun City. That's the whole reason Sol Kerzner created Sun City and had that facility up there, because it was in Bophuthatswana and they could get away, a fake homeland, they could get away with it because it was another country. South Africans of all stripes were repressed under apartheid. And all, by the same token, all Zimbabweans were liberated in a sense when democratic elections were held and we had a modern Zimbabwe. At least in theory, they should have been. So stop with foreign invaders. You won independence. Let's reconcile and let's move on. Most white Zimbabweans had reconciled. Sadly, we're down to just about 30,000 white Zimbabweans today, which is unfortunate because they were a major part of the country and part of the culture, particularly the farming culture and the mining culture, but not exclusively. All right, so Doc Breaker, do you see any correlation what is taking place in South Africa and at what point in Zim history the events took place? Yeah, that's something people have said for many years. They draw a strong correlation between the confiscation of land in Zimbabwe and then the raising the topic of expropriation of land without compensation. Now, this is where I'll be critical of a lot of folks. And so let me say specifically what I'm talking about. Okay. There are a number of white farmers in South Africa who have gone out of their way individually, personally, to engage with black South Africans and coloreds and Indians and others to help new farmers who've acquired farmland or help people acquire farmland. Some, not large numbers, but a few hundred South African farmers have even leased or given land or sold land at a song, the price, to black South Africans to farm it and then help them develop the skills. And some of those farms are doing well. The problem here is that the ANC, because it lost support, it learned the wrong lessons. The 2016 election, as I said before, it learned all the wrong lessons. The lessons weren't resort to populism. The lessons should have been to fix service delivery and root out the criminals. Perhaps the greatest tragedy here that's happened in South Africa in the last 26 years is what's happened in much of Africa. If you grew up in the United States, for instance, people aspire to be doctors and lawyers and police officers and dentists and businessmen and farmers. Very few American children grow up hoping to be a congressman or a city councilman or something like that. Most people who go to public service are drawn there after being successful. Now, there are exceptions. Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, that's all they've ever done. And the same on the Republican side, you throw examples out like that. But most people are drawn into public service as a consequence of their experience in life, and they think they can contribute and help. But in South Africa, what we've seen is not holding up an ideal of success becoming a successful businessman. The way that a lot of South Africans have learned that you become successful is the way that a lot of Africans have learned. You get the levers of power. And once you're in power, you have access to tenders. You can divert contracts. You can get baksheesh. You can get the little bribes under the table from the contracts. And that's how you become wealthy and powerful and influential, through politics. That is not the right lesson. Government exists to serve people. We don't exist to serve government. The polity, the body politic of people, create government to represent their needs and address common things like common defense and things like that. And it's a very conservative view. It's my worldview. So the problem is that in South Africa, it's upside down. And this is played out, as you saw in KwaZulu-Natal. Specifically, for those who remember, if you follow events there, for about 6 or 7 years, the number of assassinations that took place just in the past decade in KwaZulu-Natal would make your head swim. What do I mean? Well, we had a situation in which a local counselor was at a school meeting with parents, discussing needs of the school. What happens? A car drives by, guys run in the building with masks on and baklavas and spray him with AK-47 and murder him. Father of 3, ANC local ward counselor, murdered. Why? Because another ANC aspirant wants to become the ward counselor. And how does he aspire to that position? By murdering someone in his party so he can become the ward counselor and be selected for that position. South Africans have learned the wrong lessons. The lessons are not, how can I get into government to succeed? You should be learning how to be a productive member of society, as a farmer, as a doctor, as a lawyer, as a human rights campaigner, as an educator, whatever the situation is, as a dentist. Be successful and then contribute to governance once you have skills and success in other walks of life. Now, there will always be some people who are permanent politicians, that's fine. But look at Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. The woman has done nothing for the last 40 years, 30 years. All she's done has been in government, and you could run it across. Lindwe Sisulu, a competent minister, but all she's done has been a member of parliament and a parliamentarian and a member of a cabinet entirely since 1994. That's ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous. That's an extension of the big man, the whole government being the big man, not knowing when to leave the stage. So that's kind of where we're at on that. All right, I'm losing somebody here, so let's see. Do you see any correlation in what is taking place in this state? Okay, I already answered that, I think. Can we preemptively divert regarding the inevitable? Well, South Africa is still a country that lives by the rule of law, by and large. There are exceptions to that, and we see that with a lot of different things happening. I think a lot of people in South Africa should have taken note when Brett Kebble was assassinated in Sandton, when the guys walked up to his car and murdered his driver and him in broad daylight and were never captured. We should have realized that when someone that wealthy and that connected to the ANC as Brett Kebble, the mining magnate, gets assassinated in broad daylight, that things are not well in the country. And from that date forward, which has been over a decade ago now, we should have learned a lesson that there are some very serious concerns in South Africa. But how can we divert the inevitable? Well, I hope that COVID-19 will get the ANC to back off. But what we need is for more South Africans to become educated. Stop the nonsense and automatically, I'm tired of hearing about Jan van Riebeck. Yeah, okay, either from white or from black South Africans. Interesting guy, I'll talk about him. I talked about him in my wine broadcast. He produced the first bottle of wine in 1659. But Jan van Riebeck is not the reason South Africa has problems today. And by the same token, the settler columns in 1890 that moved up into Rhodesia, which later became Zimbabwe, are not the reason Zimbabwe is a mess today. The reason Zimbabwe is a mess today is because of ZANU-PF. And the reason the South Africa is a mess today is lingering consequences of apartheid and the ANC. The ANC had success early on, but when Zuma came in, we moved away from that. Now, I'm not saying that everything under Mandela and under Mbeki was roses, but certainly the path was clear and development was in progress. But the reality with all this, folks, is here's the bottom line. South Africa needs at least 6 to 8% GDP growth every year just to be successful to deal with the current backlog of inequity and underdevelopment. And it's interesting, South Africa is a first world country and a third world country. I don't like the first and third world terms, but people still use it, and that's the best analogy. You drive, you land, you fly in Cape Town, you get off the plane, you walk out, you see these horrible looking informal settlements right there. They still exist in some RDP housing next to it. And then you drive into Cape Town, you see amazing 21st century buildings and luxury estates and stuff like that. It's a dichotomy. It's two different worlds coexisting, and this is a real problem. And some of this is the fault of the ANC and their unwillingness to accept that and deal with it as part of the problem. All right, Kung Fu Kenny says, my grandparents had this photo album with all the places they traveled to here in Africa. Rhodesia at the time was a beautiful country. I wish I could find that album again. It was so much history. Yeah, no doubt. There's probably some lovely photographs in there, particularly of Vic Falls, maybe Great Zimbabwe, maybe Matopos National Park, which is down below Bulawayo in the western part of the country. I've been to Matopos. That's interesting. That's where Cecil Rhodes is buried at. There's a metal plaque on a big stone there, and it's the resting place of Cecil Rhodes. If you look off in the distance, you see all these mountains in Matopos, and it looks like the surface of Mars, little gumdrop hills all over the place. It's fascinating terrain. Yeah, but Zimbabwe, Rhodesia is a beautiful place. Unfortunately, people have, instead of governing, taken the position that it's our turn to eat, and so they're trying to eat rather than govern. And that's really sad. So Kung Fu Kenny says also, during the Zimbabwe version of EWC, they at least had South Africa and neighboring countries who still could help with their economic collapse. Here in South Africa, we won't have much support, is my guess. Yeah, and so that's a good point, Kung Fu Kenny. If South Africa were to collapse, who's going to save it? Well, the world would probably intervene, because the world, in many respects, has a lot invested in the myth of the Rainbow Nation. And I say myth because not because it's a myth, but because the myth of the happy ending. South Africa has a happy ending because apartheid is over. Well, it's not as simply as easy as ending apartheid to have a happy ending. It's also other things must take place. And so the world would likely intervene if South Africa were to collapse in some fashion, economic collapse, I should say. But right now, under COVID-19, there is no one. The ANC will not go to the IMF or to the World Bank to seek assistance because they're concerned about structural adjustment requirements, which the World Bank has said that, by and large, they're not going to impose those right now, because this is a unique situation. Yet they won't go to them. And the African Development Bank is not going to provide money for them, most likely. So that leaves who? The financial markets. They have junk bond status. They're only going to go get money from the financial markets by issuing bonds at very high interest rates, which they can't afford to repay. So they're not going to get that. So that leaves Beijing. And Beijing has all of its own problems. All of its own problems. And with Beijing having so many problems right now, what happens? Well, China's gotten a lot of good publicity for what it's done against COVID-19 in Africa. And I think some of that's deserved, but let's keep this in perspective. Let me put this in perspective for you here real quick. Okay, yes, I'm biased. I'm an American. Okay, but I'm not biased against China because I'm American, but I'm biased, you could argue, because of what I'm about to say. But okay, China under Jack Ma, a billionaire, Chinese businessman, who is a billionaire because of his access to political party, Communist Party in China, but also he has a great deal of business acumen. Certainly not his looks. He's not the most attractive fellow. But Jack Ma has donated millions of face masks and personal protective equipment and test kits to countries in Africa. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jack Ma. That's a wonderful humanitarian gesture. We really appreciate it. It's great that you do that, especially after the Chinese lied to us and didn't tell us how many cases were really in China. And we foolishly shipped them a bunch of personal protective equipment and protective masks here from the United States and other countries in the West so they could fill their stockpiles. And now we all have shortages. But that's another story. Anyway, but thank you, Jack Ma. That's great humanitarian, great philanthropy. That's what wealthy people should do. When they can help, they should help those who are less fortunate. I'm okay with that. The Chinese government also has provided assistance. For instance, there's a 13-person medical team that's deployed to Algeria, and that team has been helping the Algerian government deal with the crisis. Algeria has one of the highest counts of COVID-19 cases in Africa at this point. I think they're fourth on the continent behind Egypt, South Africa, and maybe they're ahead of Morocco. But anyway, so that team has gone there. They also offered a 19-member medical team for Nigeria, but interesting enough, the doctors' associations and medical professionals in Nigeria took offense to that, stating that they were offended that they would seek help from China when they have qualified, competent Nigerian doctors who can handle the crisis and who have been handling it effectively. I would say without reservation that I agree with the Nigerian Doctors Association and all the Nigerian doctors who took issue with that. Nigeria is doing a pretty bang-up job for a country of over 200 million people, just 400, 500 cases. They're doing a pretty good job. It's a difficult thing to deal with, but they're doing a good job. But my point is that China is contributing. But China is getting wonderful press all over the continent. People saying such wonderful things about China. They're great humanitarians. All the while, we're not paying attention to what's happening behind the curtain. Numbers being revised up by 2,000 for deaths, 2,500 in Wuhan itself, and a lot of other strange things happening in China that don't jive with the real events. We're seeing the rest of the world, particularly Europe and North America, spike in cases, although we're starting to plateau now. And China only magically has 83,000 cases. So no one's talking about that or the origins of the virus. And I'm not trying to assign blame. I'm just saying no one's talking about that. All the while, we keep hearing about how wonderful the Chinese are. They're providing this help and that help. Okay, well, let's add up the dollar value of those things. That's a few $1,000,000, maybe tens of millions of dollars. The United States, in emergency assistance, without any fanfare whatsoever, in the midst of our own crisis, in which we just increased our debt by a phenomenal amount, have provided $170 million in immediate grant relief for COVID-19 to African countries, 37 African countries. So that's where you might say why it's biased. My point is that China gets a lot of credit, but they're not the only ones. Now, when the crisis alleviates in the U.S., I would expect, and I argued this in my video about U.S. assistance, I would expect and hope that the United States provides test kits, rapid test kits, blood test kits for seropositive, and also personal protective equipment and masks, because we're going to have a surplus. We're making so many of these things. We provide these to our friends, partners, and allies in Africa in particular to alleviate the crisis there and help avert it from spreading. And also our Centers for Disease Control, National Institutes for Health, that they also work collaboratively with the African Centers for Disease Control and National Ministries of Health to share lessons learned and best practices. We should be doing that already, but with the crisis still an issue here in the U.S., it's less of a push to help our friends, partners, and allies, but we should be doing that. So Kung Fu Kenny says, Dogbreaker, it was a good question. What was that? Okay. Okay, that's the question he was talking about. Hopefully I answered that question, Dogbreaker. Hopefully I made that satisfactory. Okay, during the Zimbabwe version of it, okay, yeah, I already got that. Yeah, okay, I think I answered that question too. Okay, so there you go, folks. I'm really grateful. Let me see who's here. Take a quick peek here because I can actually do that as I'm learning the software. This says I have 2 people, but that's odd. It says 11 viewers. All right, well, anyway, so I think I'm going to wrap it up here unless there's any last questions. And I really want to thank folks for tuning in. This was meant to be a live stream to celebrate Zimbabwe's 40th anniversary as an independent nation, and I genuinely do celebrate with the Zimbabweans, and am happy for them that they are 40 years independent. And I hope and wish them success, even though I'm a pessimist about their current government. I really wish them the very best, and hope that they do well, and that they come out of COVID-19 without a disaster. We should see a determination here very shortly by President Mnangagwa about what is going to happen with the lockdown. I anticipate, could be wrong, hopefully I'm not wrong, I anticipate an easing of restrictions under the lockdown within Zimbabwe simply because they have to do it. If they continue with another 14 or 21 days of what they've just had, there'll be very serious problems there. We've got some comments over here really quick. Dogbreaker, you're most welcome. Kung Fu Kenny, have you seen a couple of different articles linked Tesla, Apple, Samsung for buying thousands of millions of masks and medical? No, I didn't. That might just be a conspiracy theory. I don't know. I don't get conspiracy theories here. They're fun, but I'm trying to stick fact based on this one. Okay, folks, thank you very much for tuning in. I'm really grateful that you, especially for those who came back and rejoined me after we disappeared there. Again, that's a YouTube thing, I guess. So I'm really grateful you were able to come back. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this. I think this was all subscribers, but if there happens to be anybody out there that's not a subscriber, just go ahead and push right down there, that subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. And right next to it, you'll find a bell. If you push the bell, pick personalized, that'll give you notifications whenever I have a live stream or a video, so you can tune in if you'd like. Also, I appreciate comments. Feel free to offer comments up in the comment section. And I've learned something else. The premiere means that there's actually chat going on when I premiere a video that I've pre-recorded. So the next time I premiere a video, I will make sure that I'm present for the chat so I can comment with people as they watch that. So if you enjoy it, please subscribe. Please feel free to comment, positive or negative. I adjust my videos based on comments. And please give me a like down there. That little like, likes drive traffic and it drives YouTube searches. So I appreciate that. Hit the bell. That's right. Thanks, Dogbreaker. And let me see. There was, thank you for the live stream. Very interesting. Yeah. Do you have a date and time for the next live stream, Jim? Yeah, I'm looking at trying to do them every Saturday. I was going to hold off longer, but I think right now I'm going to try to do them every Saturday. Let me turn off this music real quick so you can hear me clearly. But I think I'm going to try to do them every Saturday. I actually have people contacting me and requesting to be on my program. I only have 200 plus subscribers, so I'm a bit surprised by that. Apparently, it must be getting good reception. But I have someone in Ghana that works in agriculture that would like to come on the program. And also, I have a security specialist in Nigeria. I plan on bringing both of them on sometime in the near future. And then finally, one of my colleagues who worked with me in Liberia at the Ministry of Defense and also with the Armed Forces of Liberia, asked if he could be on the program as well. So Andy Hart, I'm going to bring him on eventually too. But right now I've got to figure out how I can get the video on here because I don't want to just have this Skype so you hear them. I actually like when you see a person's face, you have a better connection. So I'm still working that. But right now the plan is to try to come on here once a week and do a live stream at a minimum. I'll also do impromptu ones when an event takes place. That's kind of the plan right now. And then that's pretty much it. So folks, thanks for tuning in. Again, I'm really grateful. I'm just trying to share my experiences and my views on the world. People are welcome to agree with or disagree with it. That's the beauty of discourse, legitimate, honest, and heartfelt discourse, and there's nothing wrong with that. So as you can see, I care a lot about Africa, and I care a lot about a lot of things going on in the world. So thank you for tuning in. And that's it for today. So thank you very much. And I'm going to go ahead and end the stream here, and I'll catch you all later. Thanks a lot for tuning in. This is Chris saying so long.